Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying.
Yes, guys, welcome back to the instant reaction, the final instant reaction of the 2024-2025 season. Arsenal confirming second place in the league with a win at St Mary's over Southampton, which was never in doubt. And I was completely engrossed for the entire 90 minutes. Couldn't take my eyes off that game. Bleeding hell. We are here to break it down. I'm here with George. How are you, good sir? It's over. Finally.
I'm good. We wrap up the season, and I think that potentially we have a lot of stuff to discuss in the off season. Where to go, what to do on reflection. A season that many might say from hell. And the game, ironically, taking kind of a very season apt performance in which there are some good moments, and then there's some moments where you're thinking, come on, guys, like this is not the team that we know that can go to the potential it can, and then ending really on a good note, I would say. I always like winning, no matter what's going to happen right now. I still maintain getting the maximum points is what I was after. I was after trying to see things that I didn't see before, and I got to see Ethan Weri in the 10, which is something that I don't think he got given the responsibility of for a large portion of this season. So it was nice to see. And at the end of the day, I'm left with some things to look forward to, some things I'm ready to look past on, and just happy that we can be little bit more post-mortem than constantly putting a what if question on the team and the manager in general.
Yeah, I have to say I'm very glad the season is over, to be honest. Just to show you how that all shakes out in the rest of the fixtures, and of course in this season there was a moment where my Isak dream had a touch of joy about it, but let me just bring you the scores from around the table. Bournemouth beating Leicester 2-0, Fulham losing to Manchester City away, so Man City clinched third. Ipswich lost 1-3 to West Ham United, so West Ham won 3-1. Liverpool won, Crystal Palace won. United beat Villa 2-0. Some interesting decisions in that game, including an Emi Martinez sending off. Newcastle lost at home, but secured Champions League football against Everton. Nottingham Forest 0. Chelsea 1, meaning Nottingham Forest, I think, played Conference League. I'm just going to confirm that in a second. Us beating Southampton away at St Mary's. Tottenham having a better season than us, obviously, finishing 17th. With a 4-1 home defeat on the final day to Brighton and Hove Albion and Wolves and Brentford. Bryan Mbeumo scoring his 20th league goal of the campaign. Unbelievable campaign for him. That is how it leaves it. Liverpool in first, obviously, 10 points behind. Okay, that's more respectable at this point. 10 points behind. Only one win in their last 5 for Liverpool. 10 points behind. Arsenal securing second on 74 points. Man City 3 points behind on 71st. Chelsea and Newcastle making up the remaining Champions League places. Villa securing Europa League. That is a big problem for them. That is a big problem for them, only being in Europa League. Forest getting European football and Conference League, although they would have wanted more. And then you can see the rest of the table. There was a moment, George, where my Isak dream was alive, but hashtag welcome Sesko.
I just feel like the whole part of this game was that it wasn't even watching the game in terms of.
I was just looking at Everton.
More, yeah, and that was kind of the mentality with it. I leave this to the summer personally. I think if we're going to talk about different ways, I have some opinions about it. I have an Isaac option and a non-Isaac option, and I have options either way. And I don't think. Let's put it this way. I'm equally confident of being able to say that Arsenal will be favorites for the Champions League and the Premier League with either scenario. I can give you windows where I'm genuinely confident of that. It does not, for me, rely on an Isaac window alone. But yes, it would have been nice. It would have been nice. But it would have, I could talk all the tactical rant as I can, but it would have been nice, and it would have been something for us to celebrate in a sense, because it would have asked a question, mate. It would have 100% asked a question.
Yeah, for sure. We will do all that sort of stuff on the main pod and moving forward, talking about our summer, etc. But we do have a game to break down. There was a game today. 2-1 away at St Mary's. Obviously, interesting line-up in terms of who was available and so on and so forth. The pace of the game was unbelievable at times. Obviously, we had Kieran Tierney at left centre-back and Raheem Sterling playing out there, Weri in the 10, and Marino up front, and Calafiori still not available, a number of different things. I thought, given the circumstances, given how on the beach everyone was, I thought we created some decent openings, a couple of decent chances early on. One for Marino, I think one for Martinelli, certainly from a header. Probably Zinchenko should have scored a couple of times. But we got the goal through Kieran Tierney with a little overlap, George. Can you believe it? We overlap these days.
I actually thought Kieran Tierney had a phenomenal game broadly. Like, in terms of some of my best performances, he was one of them today. And yeah, mate, like in certain instances, there was definitely some vintageness about the way that we attempted to enter the box, and we'll be talking quite a bit probably in the summer and debating about how we fix our way of turning quality chances in the final third into quality shots. That's going to be the biggest lesson from this season. Fundamentally, the fact that we've lost the title to Liverpool without as many losses says it all. Really, like the amount of draws is quite ridiculous. And I think that when you're turning that, it has to do with what you do with the ball, the luck that you create. And I think it's a long-winded way of saying, I think that there's a lot of people that have rigid ideas about the coach or believe the coach to be rigid. And I just don't think that's the case. I mean, we see it again. There are different ways to open up different teams. And I'm really tired of, having to have conversations with this role in mind and knowing Mikel. No. Like, we have to stop that, because have a look at today. Have a look at your ability to create overlaps on both sides. This isn't a question about a particular player or players. It's about getting people in the right areas. And that needs to be a conversation that we're more willing to have with Mikel. And I was happy to see it, because I think it confirmed quite a bit of the non-rigidity thing that I think a lot of people do question with Mikel. But undoubtedly, it was nice to see. It was nice to see both sides being able to access. I still think that there was a lot of kinks in terms of the back line, because not a lot of people have played together. So some of the timings and some of the passes meant that they weren't coming off. But as far as some of the options that I was seeing, I was really happy with the movement. And to me, it didn't seem as predictable in the final third. I thought that there was an issue getting to the final third at times, if anything. But once we were in the final third, I actually thought that there was a lot more variation to which we attacked today. And where we were getting into chances in the box, I think, was quite different.
I think you're right. There was more shots from outside the box. There's more half-space crossing. There was more variety in terms of going over and under and underlapping. There's a lot we were doing, which was really nice. I will say, I think this whole game, the overlap plus the goal from the set piece, plus even the fact that Ødegaard scores from that situation. It's a lot of okay, that's exciting, but we need to see how this develops. And even the fact that they scored from the set piece, is that a problem without Gabriel and Havertz, which we can, I think it is basically, or is that a longer term problem? Because that's another set piece goal we conceded. There's a lot of things that basically come out today where you go, okay, these could add to a narrative, or we could start to set and prove that Ødegaard is back or whatever, but you need more sample before we go too far onto it. And I think if we start next season poorly, we may look back at the end of this season and go, see, the early signs were there. But actually, if we fix them, and hopefully we feel we will, hopefully we won't be thinking about the end of the season too much. Let's talk about the Ødegaard goal, because I actually thought he had a pretty nice cameo, and we have to say that. And we've been critical of Ødegaard this season. He had a nice cameo. I thought he was decent. I think one of the one things, again, another sort of a string you could pull out of this game, or thread you could pull out of this game, is the tempo. Oh my goodness me, some of the tempo in this game was awful. So much time for everyone on the ball, just boom, slow down, not even touches, just lack of quick decision making. I thought Ødegaard sped us up, and again, that it depends what happens next season, whether we see that as a problem or not for this end of this season. But Ødegaard, thought was nice, and came on and scored his goal from an important position, and actually shrugged someone off to do so. So credit to him.
There's a couple things that, again, are going to fall into the confirmation bias, right? Like the drifting to the left, bang. The idea that his ankle wasn't forever changed from injury. This was more of a mentality and a technique issue. I mean, you look at that, and I'm sorry, I'm not finding a player that can't ball strike, that isn't able to do these things. We just have to be honest about some of the things that we're seeing there. And, I want to give praise because he's gone out and done it. And it's what gives me hope, by the way. I've never felt that this was a lost cause. For all my criticisms of Ødegaard, I've always felt that there are answers to get more out of this player. And if we don't, I'm not as melodramatic as, oh my God, he absolutely must stay in the pitch. Equally, I just think that we need to be a little bit balanced. For me, it was a great shot. It was a great strike. It's something that I know that's in his locker, and I'd like to see more of. We just haven't seen it this season. As much as you want to talk about it, we just haven't seen it. And so from from this perspective, it was good. I even thought Ødegaard was a little bit quicker to release in this cameo as far as his final ball, and just there was less dallying on the ball. And these are all things that I've always said were constructive criticism points for me that I just want to see. Like, can you please drift left more, Martin? You have runners on that side. It makes sense for you to be a high touch player to interact with those players less than the ones on the right, who we all have a lot of high touch players with. So there's better balance, and it looks good. Shock horror, drifts left, boom, we get a chance and a really good goal. That's on him now. The individual, in terms of what we've talked about for so long, some of the things that he needs to do in terms of being stronger under contact, in terms of being able to strike the ball well. He has good ball striking technique, but some of the things that he needs to do are getting a good center, a good base, and, you know, having good technique to do it. Before, it was grasped at, it was, you know, leaning back, and his application and his shooting technique wasn't good. And that for me was the biggest issue, not a loss of power and any kind of injury, none of that. It was more about focus and making good connections, and he did it. And, you know, the last thing about the final pass I think is important. Like, some of those looks to the back post and those half space crosses are things that he can do, right? And the benefit of those are early vision, early release. And as long as he does those things, I think that even with a poor form, he's going to ask questions about being in the team. But if he doesn't do those things and he continues to have poor form, you're going to have questions. And that's about it. But it was a really good cameo, I thought. And, you know, he showed some things that I think we were asking for.
Yep. Yeah, and you know, you mentioned it earlier. Like we have been critical this season, but he's never come out of either yours or my team. It's not. We want him on the pitch. It's a, you know, that's always been the question mark. It's just what he's doing on the pitch, and yeah, it's difficult to go too far and say, you know, he's back based on one performance at the end of the season with so many caveats. But if we can see more like that, that's exactly what I think we're certainly on the same page in terms of wanting. Let's have a look at the numbers from the backbone of this channel, Scott Willis. Here we are. Arsenal 2.3 expected goals to 0.6 from Southampton. 23 shots to 7, taking more shots, which is nice. 7 on target, 17 open play shots, more possession, more passes, more final third entries. Yeah, I think pretty expected across the numbers there. There's the running XG, Arsenal in yellow, Southampton in red. You can see the numbers there. There's the shot map, and yeah, I think you can see from the locations of the shots and stuff, the variety we were getting in terms of getting where we were getting the ball into the box, sort of the positions we were having some big chances in. It's really nice. And of course, we win the Field Tilt World Championships. The real shame is I saw some numbers earlier. Man City are ahead of us in the Premier League Field Tilt World Championships. So we didn't even win it's this season, man. We haven't even won the Field Tilt World Championships. What's the point, George? What's the bloody point?
Preposterous. I did want to slightly highlight some of the numbers because we do tend to like skip through these a little bit. I would love to just go back to the beginning, and then we'll go to the penalty box at the end. But just have a look in isolation at the number of shot differentials. So 23-7. When we talk about that, mate, like that is insane. To me, this was not a 23-7 shot game, though. And one of the biggest things that I really need us to do is when we start saying that there's 17 open play shots to 2, I need to increase the percentage of those that are better quality chances and better quality shots, because I think despite having many shots at times or turning a period of dominance, because I look at the stat sheet, mate, and it is clear that Arsenal were the better team. But when you have a look at some of these shots that were taken within the penalty box and our ability not to finish some of these things, like this is a pass map that we've seen and tied many times this season. This is a shot map that we've seen, or a game state that we haven't always won, and many times we've drawn. And for me, that's been the biggest issue between us and the title, to be honest. So it's about looking, how did we get this many shots in a penalty box? Like, let's make that more consistent. Yes. But how are we going to go and more consistently create better quality shots from these situations? Has to be something we look at. And, you know, I think that, you know, we did really well from a creation standpoint today. And it goes beyond just Southampton being poor. I think the variety to which we were able to attack that back line meant it was more disorganized, and we really put ourselves on there. The only thing is I really wish we would have stepped on the throat of Southampton. And I don't think we do that often enough. Like, we need to stop playing with our food in general. And when we have 17 shots to 2, I want to see a 3-4-1 win. When we start seeing, massive differentials in terms of our field tilt, in terms of our dominance, in terms of our shots, in terms of our XG in the box, whatever weird metric you want to talk about, when it's such a disparity like that, I don't like seeing 2-1s. I don't like seeing what for me felt a lot closer of a game for, I'd say, 60 minutes than what I'm seeing statistically. And I think that's the biggest thing that Arsenal maybe need to take forward, because the reason and the consequence of doing what we're doing is I think you result in more draws. You leave things more to chance and more to variance. So that's just, that's one of the biggest lessons that I'm taking specifically from this game, where I'm saying that's a brilliant performance statistically. I need to match it with a little bit more directness and a little bit more consistent output.
Yeah, I will say I think some of these, obviously XG, like for example, if that's Zinchenko on his left on the edge of the box with the first line of the Southampton defence here, I'd put that as a way bigger chance for me because of how technically good Zinchenko is. I think a lot of this is based on distance and Kieran Tierney
and players
on his
between the shots.
Yeah, and Kieran Tierney on his right, here isn't, or here, let's say, is a very, very different chance. I think, pulling the ball back to an Ethan Waneri, and I imagine a couple of these down here were an Ethan Waneri off his left, which I think is also a big chance. So it depends who it is. It's a very difficult thing to say, but I do agree that in general, we can get a much higher quality level of chances, a much higher level of creativity across the season. I mean, Mikel himself has said it. I was really pleased that he specifically said we need to be more creative, need to have more shots, need to be more. There's everything we can do, and let's see how they fix it. Let's go to some super chats from Ivan Smith. The refs gave Newcastle UCL football and took Isak from us. Another thing we can blame them for. Yes, it's all on us. Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I wonder how much of this is. Do you remember the Hawkeye thing with Villa in 2020 when they didn't go down because of Hawkeye?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
This is the payback.
One of those.
This is the payback, potentially. Thank you for your super chat, Ivan Smith. Sway London says, still think we're spending too much energy and resources looking for a centre forward. There's so much attacking talent in other positions for far better value. Well, I think this is why I quite like a summer. Maybe we'll come on to this in a minute. I quite like a summer of a Sesko and Rodrigo, because I think Rodrigo comes in and immediately, as long as you supplement him, and you can go check out our scout that we did this week and we spoke about him a lot, because that is a talent that raises your ceiling, and then you don't put everything on Rodrigo. I think again, George kind of mentioned it earlier. We scored 17 less goals than Liverpool. Okay, and that is a concern. But for me, the answer to that isn't go and sign someone to bridge that 17 goal gap. The answer to me is, how do we get 5 more out of Saka? How do we get 5 more out of Martinelli? How do we get 5 more out of Ødegaard, out of Havertz? How do we add someone in who brings us another 10, 15? The fact that across the board, we do not have a player who got over 10 digits in the Premier League. That is the problem. It's not, to me, if we had one player, I'd also be concerned. If we had one player who was on 25 and everyone else was on 2 or 3, that's also a big problem. For me, it's maximizing the entire squad, and I've always felt that that's a thing. But for me, I think what Sway's saying here in terms of we're looking for the perfect centre forward, that isn't coming now. Now Newcastle have got, or not that he even is the perfect centre forward, but the closest to a perfect centre forward with Isak. Now they have got Champions League. I don't think that's happening. I think we need to be looking at the wings and saying, okay, what can we get out there? And someone like a Rodrigo plus a Šeško plus other things around it, I think we start to get pretty close to saying, as you've said before, okay, we can almost guarantee.
Yeah, I'm just going to be looking for really specific traits. And, I'm going to repeat my favorite phrase of the last couple of weeks. I don't want to squint to define the talent here. And, if we're going to provide a combo, the level of squint needs to be minimal. And, that just fundamentally needs to be the question for me. And it comes down to that. For as much as I love my little tactical thing, I think quality is quality. And you know it when you see it. And there's just a couple things that we definitely need to contribute to this next season. And, we'll talk about it, but really quickly, it's those quality shots. I maintain the shots from transition is a huge thing, mate. It's a huge thing. Like the thing that you're talking about, adding another 5 goals around the pitch in the attacking group. Well, when we generate the amount of turnovers that we do, which is consistently more than any other team, but then operate at relegation level from turning those to quality shots is ridiculous. It's like one of the only metrics that this team operates at mid to relegation level.
I think we've got worse, by the way. I looked at the numbers again recently. I think we got worse.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. And you know, I'm so surprised why this isn't a bigger talking point within the fan base, to be honest with you, because again, it's the only statistical metric that Arsenal as a whole are not top 5 in. And in fact, mid-table to relegation from. So it's genuinely not just bad and it's like an average problem. It's shocking. And so to change that, I think changes our lives in many different ways. But yeah, mate, like I think we're going to be talking about a lot of different combos, about a lot of different players now. And when you have an Isaac less Summer and the scenario within that, I think it means that you're going to get creative. Personally, I think that Isaac made things clear for a lot of people. But the creativity, we're going to have some serious conversations, right? Because, you know, we talked about Rodrigo. I'd encourage everybody to really go look at the Scouted, not just a self plug, but I think that there were some interesting things there where we're looking at a player that's got incredible talent. But again, we're talking about this platforming thing and we're talking about using talent in the right way. And that needs to be probably a bigger discussion for us within the fan base right now, because we're in a market, mate, where we're not recruiting bad players. And I want to do this to tie off the rant. Like whatever combo we look at, fundamentally, they're not bad players. So when I don't prefer Gyökeres for a certain combination, a different thing, it's not because Gyökeres is shit. It's not because he's not a bad player. We're operating at very good player level. However, what we can't do is we can't squint to see, okay, if I see it in this light and in this way, I can make it work. We can't rely on what if and in this scenario and with this caveat. That is no longer going to be the demand for the season moving forward. And I will go as far to say, like, I think my expectations, regardless of what we do in the summer, are going to be that Arsenal need to be able to say with confidence they will be favorites for the Champions League and the Premier League. And if we fail to do that and we fail to follow through on something like that, I don't think we're ever owed a trophy, but we should come in with the mentality that we believe we should win a trophy. And that mentality has to be kind of the starting point of the season for me going into next. Like, I think we're at a point in this process or project, we need to start demanding output in that sense. And I think this also isn't something new that, you know, Mikel hasn't spoke of. Like, you look at that speech and it was really quite clear.
Yeah, another way of putting this, just to put something on screen. So this is from Data Analytics CPL, percentage of sequences with a box entry, English Premier League. So essentially, the left-hand side is how much people get into your box, and the right-hand side is how much you get into the opposition's box. We're unbelievable at getting into people's boxes and keeping them out of ours. So in terms of where we need to, we all know this. It's just another way of saying the same thing. We need better finishers, fundamentally, in my opinion, and or to get the better finishers in our team into better positions, however you want to sort of put it. Also, just to show some stats, which there'll be certain Liverpool fans who don't like. Did think this was interesting, very interesting, comparing Martin Ødegaard and Florian Wirtz. Martin Ødegaard for one of his worst seasons for Arsenal, and Florian Wirtz in this season for Bayer Leverkusen. But we'll leave that there. I didn't mention it. Let's go to next super chat from Big Cheese. He says, formal request for all the Cannonpod boys to cross post on Blue Sky for those of us that won't use that other platform. We don't post on Blue Sky. I don't think I have a Blue Sky account.
I made one a while ago and then I stopped doing it. We can maybe look into it.
We could potentially look into it. If there's enough people on there, when we're not against it for sure. Flicky Flack says, yes, guys, this is just a while ago about my brother passing. He was a Sunderland season ticket holder and his son was there yesterday. Please give a shout. I absolutely love that, Flicky Flack. I remember your message about your brother, and apologies again. But yeah, huge Sunderland back in the Premier League. He was there. He was there in spirit. Let's go to Soon. And the guy, Alex, wants to get rid of Martinelli. Okay. I'll try again. What I've said about Martinelli is this. If you give me a straight swap between Martinelli and Trossard and ignore finances, obviously keep Martinelli. Literally no question about it. So and those of you who stopped listening, you can reopen your ears now. But the next bit is the key part. My question mark is this. If we need to make a big sale, and if we're looking at a purchase like Rodrigo, and we can get, let's say, 60, 70, 80 million pounds of Martinelli, that's something I'd seriously be looking at. Because I think unless, for me, George and I spoke about this on Rodrigo Scouted, Rodrigo is a talent that is worth platforming in the way that basically we think Martinelli should be. To get the most out of Martinelli, you need to do similar-ish things that you would do with Rodrigo. slightly different but similar-ish. And for me, Rodrigo is way more worth doing that than Martinelli. That's just my opinion. But no, I do want to get rid of him, 100%.
Yeah, the Martinelli conversation is always interesting. It creates maybe one of the more divisive players besides Ødegaard.
So.
Like those are the two that I think this season have had like the divisive, comments. Look, I refuse. I will tweak this in the sense of I don't have loyalty to any player for me. I categorically refuse to deny that Martinelli doesn't have talent. I also believe that he's one of the worst platforms players in the squad, fundamentally. And I also believe that he just, on an individual level, hasn't done well this season. So your level of blame kind of goes back to like a pod that we had earlier in the season where we have this spectrum of environment and individual responsibility. And where you align on that is different, but your ability to stick through it is because of how much you believe in the talent.
Yep.
If you believe more in Martin Ødegaard, even though you felt that there was more individual things, then you're more willing to stick through with it. If you believe in the talent of Martinelli a little bit more strongly at your core, you're going to believe in that a little bit more. I will say this, fundamentally, I just don't think he is the third, fourth, or even fifth most wasted talent in this squad. Like I look at Jesus, I look at Trossard even as having a question mark. I look at Reiss Nelson. I look at many fringe within the attacking depth. And I think a lot of the frustration with the Martinelli conversation comes a little bit more to do with our lack of quality and our issues in attack and being put on that a bit more. Where if you were to add and like have some serious, say you add Rodrigo, right, man, and you add Rodrigo and Sesko, and I'm looking at replacing Trossard, Reiss Nelson within that squad, even though they're smaller sales, they still amount together to about 50-60 versus Martinelli at 75. I'm still doing the Trossard and Reiss Nelson route with a little bit cheaper. Why? Because it's a better quality across the attacking depth, and we've only made a difference of 10, 15, 20 million pounds of a difference. It's not significant. And that for me is a bigger question. I mean, Reiss Nelson categorically, I think, can command 20 to 25 million pounds. I think if you sell Trossard this summer, you're looking at that right now. Those are bigger questions for me in general. And I think Rodrigo, again, I'm just really excited by that link because it means a very different platforming, mate. A very different platforming just in general. And I think that there's a lot of overlap between Jesus, Trossard, and Rodrigo, though, in profile. As far as those three players go, that's the same player. And that's the biggest question. Whereas, ironically, Rodrigo is very different to Martinelli. If we were to get like something like a Barcola or even a Nico Williams in different areas, like those are more comparable questions, right? Like I think Rodrigo has a little bit different stresses than say some of those other wingers. But again, the combination in terms of what you do needs to make sense. You need to look at the collective as a whole, and you need to find ways of us maximizing talent. And I just don't want a redundancy in skills. That's where I'm at with the whole conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think however you think, people can have different perspectives on it, but however you get there in the end, I don't want us to go into next season short numbers-wise, quality-wise, skills-wise, whatever it might be. I happen to have a different valuation of Trossard and Reiss Nelson. I think you get way more from Martinelli personally. But again, however we get there, it doesn't really matter. It's about having fundamentally the right amount of depth, the right amount of skills, and not leaving ourselves short again. I think one of my biggest frustrations is we went into the season with 22 registered players. That's 3 slots available. You can't do that. When Rico Lewis is being left out of the Man City squad because of numbers, we can't do that again. It's not acceptable. And that's a way bigger problem to me than, it could is Martinelli the right, whatever. Like that's a way bigger problem. That's 3 players that we could have had that we didn't have. That's way more important than the Martinelli conversation to me. So there's way bigger issues for me. If Alex's favorite player Sterling goes, I think Luke Shaw will be great for the youth development to pick up the girls. Yes, it's really unfortunate. Raheem Sterling's last game in an Arsenal shirt. See ya. Kieran Tierney, last game in an Arsenal shirt. Credit to him. Lovely to see him get a goal. Best of luck to him at Celtic as well. Probably the likes of Zinchenko's last game in an Arsenal shirt. Potentially Thomas Partey's last game in an Arsenal shirt. Did we see Jorginho at the end? I must have missed that if we did.
Think so.
I don't think we
I
did.
don't
So
think so.
potentially his was at the end. No, we didn't. Could have been Trossard's last game in Arsenal shirt. Yeah, interesting. So a number of players there who potentially had their bows today. Best of luck to them. Obviously, David Raya, also should mention, has won the Golden Glove. He's won the Premier League Golden Glove for the second year in a row, which I think puts him in one of only 4 others. I think it's alongside like Joe Hart, Edison, and a couple of others. So it's a really big achievement for David Raya. I did see some links earlier saying that we were looking at replacing David Raya with Emi Martinez. So no, thank you. ZFB. I think we need Sesko, Rodrigo, plus one of Williams, Semenyo, Lookman, and Leao. Allows us to cover both wings and play Rodrigo as a 10 in game as well. Yeah, George and I spoke about Rodrigo potentially as someone on that right-hand side alongside Asaka. I think he would be fantastic. But also I think he could play in a number of positions across the front line. I think we will continue with this slightly unpredictable, versatile front line. I don't hate it. And I think it will happen. As people know, I happen to think there might be a world in which Bukayo Saka plays a couple of games on the left. I don't think you move him out of his best position, but there might be games where he's better on the left. But I think we'll see a lot of rotation next season. I think Rodrigo. That's why I'm so excited about Rodrigo. There is one thing though, I think, which is there might be something in the kind of the symbol of Arsenal signing a number 9. Because the frustrating part is this. We could sign Barcola and Rodrigo, and there would still be some fans who aren't happy because we haven't signed a traditional number 9. And I think we maybe just need to keep our eyes open and be like, okay, do we if I'd rather not sign a 9 than get the wrong 9. You see what I mean? So, if Barcola and Rodrigo and other proper wing talents are available and they change how Arsenal look, we've still got Havertz and Jesus, but there will be a lot of fans and even myself who would be going to next season saying, "Oh, another season without a traditional number 9 would be tough."
I think it's about us defining the problem properly. Far too often, I do find that we FIFA this, and it's very rigid. And it's not even just a number 9. Like you can say Isaac is the only one. Like we want a one pill solution as fans because you do it or you don't get it. Then it's easy. It's easy to define. And I think a lot of fans struggle with that, right? Like, I do not agree that a system needs one player. It is more about the collective and how you use it. It's just how I view football. And there are many different combinations that I think work. But it's about understanding them. Like, for example, what's the major con of a Sesko and Rodrigo pairing between the two of them? Right now you're looking at phenomenal talents, but I'd say one of the cons there is that from a reference perspective, both aren't able to hold back to goal. From a contact perspective, like you're not getting a reference over the top of a press, and you're really relying on the fitness of Kai Havertz and potentially Mikel Merino in backup situations to provide that. But like that's a con of that pairing. Every pairing is going to have a con. It's about understanding which pairing solves the most holes for Arsenal when you start to detail the attack. And like those remain box efficiency / being a reference. Those remain turning quality turnovers into quality shots. Those remain some of the tempo in terms of what we're doing. And I think Zubamendi addresses the tempo. So from that perspective, great.
Yeah.
But when you look at a pairing of the forward line, what we need is we do need to address the pace. We do need to address our transition from turnovers to quality shots. And we do need to address how we can be a reference in the box, because we are such a dominant team that at times you're going to face low blocks. You're going to find time when the space out wide isn't there, or even in the middle. So we need to find a different way of creating space within the box. And so I think those 3 questions, attacking wise, need to be solved by your group, and you need to be confident in that, and not just say, well, I believe in the ceiling of it necessarily. Like we need next season, that pair needs to do it. It's why, again, I'm going to go back to Ollie Watkins that people don't like, and I don't know why. As far as value for money, like we're talking about, oh my God, Isaac, I'm looking at Villa right now in serious financial difficulty and asking, is a 45 million pound deal before June something they entertain? Following this, is that something that's more of a win now solution? Combine that with like a really top level wide forward. Like, are we talking Watkins plus a Barcola, for example, which is something that excites me? Are we talking about a Watkins plus, but even like a Brian Mbeumo? Like, I love that link. Those are the types of players that solve some of the things where they definitely create a reference in the box. Brian Mbeumo, for example, it's going to be a very different perspective of it, But again, you're looking at moving Saka inside. We're looking at changing the team. It would excite me as a link, and it has. And it's a player who has, again, got 20 goals. Like, these are good players. I can see how they work. What I don't want to do is go into a season in which we've selected some unknown talents that solve some things, but as a collective pair don't solve those three things of transition shots, of box references, and of pace in the front line. If we're not solving those three things with the pair, I'm going to be afraid and like annoyed.
I agree, and I think there's a lot of people who would rather Arsenal sign, let's say, Ekitike, who doesn't solve all those things, because he's a 9. And they go, well, he's a 9. It's like, yeah, but what when you're asking for a 9, what do you mean? And that's why I'm still interested in Victor Osimhen, which Jack AFC has put in. I think Osimhen solves a lot of our issues, a lot of the issues that George has outlined, like specifically Arsenal's issues. And I don't understand why we're not after him. The only thing I can think is there have been some concerns about him as a personality, which I think at this point in the project, as we've always said, if one person can down your project because they're slightly moody at times, you've never had a project to begin with. I'm sorry. If one squad member can completely ruin your culture, that's on your culture. That's not on them. Zombler, I just want some more flair next season, mate. You and me both. Yeah, we want to feel the staticness in the final third is gone. We want to feel the tempo and the team is back. We want to feel we can score goals out of nothing. We want to feel like we can score goals from behind and win games in that way, which is another big thing. Just needs to come. And let's finish with this one from Nathan. Enzo Milo for left. It's just one of those ones where it's a funny name and I've not realised, like bend over or something. Enzo, I've never heard of him. Do you know who he is?
No.
He is a player. If George hasn't heard of someone you're repping, that tells you something, mate. That's on you. I've never heard of him in my life. Enzo Milo.
I've never heard of him.
There you go.
But you know what, mate? Like, the only thing I did want to mention just really quickly in this post match is just a couple things from this game to loop it back, because again, we always do go to transfers, but I loved seeing the Ethan Weri, not even just cameo, but the minutes that we saw there. There were some things, mate. Do you remember that one point at the top of the box? He does an insane pirouette to get out of trouble inside the pocket, literally in zone 14. Mate, we don't have that. We do not have that invention in the squad. Like, even when he's peeled out on the right wing on the overlap and he does that insane skill to split the Southampton defenders, to cut inside. And there is a level of ingenuity in that boy that I really think a lot of our issues at the top of the box, that people get jealous on a Florian Wirtz, that they talk about an Eze, and they talk about those things. There's some big potential for Ethan next season as a major option that I think we need to start thinking about, because when you look at that profile, right, like that is somebody that's already got an elite shooting bag from outside the box. Like, as far as some of those things, like, he's probably our best player in the squad in terms of shooting outside the box and most repeatable goal scoring, right? That's one thing. But I really want to talk about the ability in the pockets and the ingenuity that he's been able to find, and being able to trust having players like that. I think that this team is going to have to change a bit, mate, in terms of, with Miles and with Ethan, the way that they can receive in pockets requires a level of trust that sometimes when you see 2 or 3 people on them, just give them the ball. They will find a solution. We need to be a bit more willing to risk in those kind of balls. I find far too often, I think what people complain about with the staticness in the final third is that the reason it goes wide is because it's safe. And the safe concerns are we don't chance a player who's covered. And we've got players now that can turn and manipulate the ball in ways that other players can't. So we need to accommodate some of that. And I think that I just like to push that a little bit going forward, because that cameo that I saw from Ethan today was really good, mate. It got me excited, because I thought that was a guy that was showing some pretty good resistance to contact today. Really engaging. And the way that he was pressing off the ball was something that I think we needed in an Ødegaard-less team.
I think he'll be big for us next season. I really do. I think a proper preseason, some time in the squad. I think he's going to take some pushing off the squad. I think there was an interview with Ben White this week, And he was asked who's the best trainer at the club, and he said Weri.
Yeah.
And that will not be going unnoticed. He said he's the best technically, and in terms of in training, he is the best every day in terms of like the consistency. So that's, and we all know Mikel Arteta. He's the sort of guy who's going to reward that. So I think, I think he's exciting. I think the things you mentioned, where Arsenal are weak. Again, if we're looking at the likes of Osimhen and Rodrigo, and we're saying these are skills we don't have. Where we have been weak this season, you're right. Weri has a lot of the crossover there and a lot of the kind of the Venn diagram of skills that we don't have. Let's finish on this. Nathan Piper, lads, from Kenneth Taylor to an Ødegaard bomber. It's been a season. Guess you guys are not that bad. Thank you for helping me sink deeper into my love for this club with you. Amazing tacticos. Keep it up. Thank you, Nathan. That is very, very kind. See you in the chat every week, so I really appreciate it. And yeah, that's probably a good place to end it. Thank you all for being here in 24-25. Yes. We've got a lot to do over the summer. We've got from Arsenal's perspective, so much to do in terms of the transfer market, getting some contracts done, getting some rest in. I think is a massive thing. This team needs we need a rest, and we're going to have a rest. I think our first confirmed preseason game is on the 23rd of July, so it's 2 months. Obviously, there's a couple of internationals and stuff, but I think it's big for the likes of Declan Rice and Saka and Gabriel and Saliba and stuff who played a lot of minutes to just get some proper rest, 3, 4, 5 weeks in the sun, and then come back. So that's huge, and we will obviously be covering that. But yeah, just want to say a massive thank you to you guys for being here after every single game. We're not going anywhere. And yeah, just a massive thank you for your support. We really appreciate. We see the same guys in the chat and stuff who are always here, always supporting us after every single game, and yeah, it doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you for being here with us. And yeah, 25-26, bigger and better things.
Yeah, I'm not going to go on a bigger rant than that. A lot of consideration and gratitude. There's been some big moves, even from a channel perspective and even personally, like being able to move on from my PhD, and the support that I've got from you guys, the community, has been incredible. Not just, on a, community basis from an Arsenal perspective, but just you guys in general. You make our day. You are the reason why we do these things. And we love you guys so much. So thank you. And this is only, one of the beginning things. We're going to be doing more and trying to do better for you always.
Absolutely. And someone says, Cannon Podcast OnlyFans when? There are certain lines we won't cross. And we will not be doing an OnlyFans. But yeah, this is the pod we're having conversations. We recently just got a producer, somebody sort of acting as a producer for us. So we're trying to start to upgrade some stuff technically and stuff. So yeah, hopefully you'll begin to see some stuff roll out. And over the summer, we're going to try and be a little bit more agile in terms of streams and stuff. When news breaks, we'll try and be a little bit more sort of on streams and stuff. The main podcast will still be here. TCP Live and the Scouteds and stuff will still continue. But yeah. Final thing to say before we close off is a massive congratulations to Arsenal women as well for winning the Champions League. Even in Spurs winning the Europa League, they still got eclipsed by Arsenal while the women win the Champions League in Lisbon. And who knows why the Cronkies were there in Lisbon? We'll find out. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, George.
Thank you, good sir.
Thanks so much for watching. And thanks, as always, for every game in 24-25 for keeping it Arsenal.
Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying!